Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring thought leaders in the career and personal growth arena. I know that you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so my goal is to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I am thrilled to welcome my very special guest to the show today, Jennifer Brown. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Caroline.
Hey, I want to tell our listening audience all about you. We've got millions of people listening around the world. Jennifer Brown is the founder, president, and CEO of Jennifer Brown Consulting and is a passionate social equality advocate committed to helping leaders foster healthier and therefore more productive workplaces. Informed by more than a decade of consulting to Fortune 500 companies, her new book entitled Inclusion, Diversity, the New Workplace, and the Will to Change creates a compelling case for leadership to embrace the opportunity that diversity represents for their own growth and for the success of their organizations. Jennifer, so excited about this book. Tell me, what prompted you to write this book?
Well, Caroline, I have had a big vision for more inclusive workplaces for many years now. I was an employee inside the companies, feeling disengaged and struggling to have more authenticity in my role, and really trying to find my potential and enjoy my work on a day-to-day basis. So I do have those memories, and when I realized that a lot of other people shared that disconnect with their employer often based on their whether they feel included or not, and suspecting that some of that inclusion had to do with their own diversity of identity, background, gender, sexual orientation, race and ethnicity, ability. I realized that that diversity really is at the heart of what may or may not be going well with employers and their ability to attract and retain the best talent. So it was a personal story for me. And then when I started consulting in the space, I really was passionate about bringing the tools and the frameworks to educate people on the inside of companies about how they can be a part of the change, whether they're, a junior person or whether they're a very senior person, and everything in between.
It's so important. I'm sure you've heard these statistics. The Gallup organization says that 70% of Americans in the workforce are disengaged. And I think your book, it really nails how we can become better engaged. But I want you to help our audience unpack what's the difference between diversity and inclusion, and why does that matter?
That's a question I get often. What is the difference between those two words? We throw them around a lot. We say diversity and inclusion. Some companies I work with that are household names might say inclusion and diversity, so they flip the order. Some just say it's inclusion and belonging or inclusion and collaboration. So the actual name of the function is in flux in a lot of our clients, which is interesting and I think a sign of the times. I think the way it's evolved is that diversity is an older word in terms of what we've been measuring for a long time. We've been looking at the representation and the metrics in our organizations. So literally, what are our numbers of women at certain levels, of people of color at certain levels? How many LGBT people do we have, which is a really hard thing to measure. So that would represent diversity as defined as the who or the what. So what is quantifiable about our workforce? Inclusion is really the how. I think of it as the behavior that if somebody is an inclusive leader, are they creating more inclusive cultures that then drives more diverse talent to come and to stay in that organization. So if you flip the order, it starts and leads with inclusion as the most important conversation, because that behavior needs to exist and inclusion needs to be valued in the company as practiced by the leaders in that company. And then diversity metrics like representation will follow along if it's an inclusive environment. So the order is interesting to play with because some people believe that if you set targets around your representation, that you can literally hire your way into better numbers, right? If you just have a focus on diversity. My argument, and the reason that I called the book Inclusion, is that I really believe that it does change with every single leader's behavior on a day-to-day basis, that we all have to understand how can each of us, whether it's our job or not, and often it's not our job, how can we create an inclusive environment through valuing diversity that will welcome more people to actually stay and to build their careers with whatever, our company, whether that's a large company or a startup or everything in between. How can we lead with inclusion and have that conversation? Because then I believe that actually it will impact the diversity numbers in the end.
I love your philosophy and how you so eloquently wrote about this in the book. And I'm with you. I think inclusion does need to be first. It's not about numbers. It's about creating a culture of inclusion, as you said, and also helping people understand how they fit into the workplace and how what they do is meaningful in the organization, no matter where they are on the organizational chart. Let's take it a step further. Jennifer, what is your personal experience? Let me back up and just start by asking, what's the concept of employees covering in the workplace, and how does this negatively impact business? So first, define the concept of covering.
Sure, absolutely. So covering is defined as downplaying a known stigmatized identity. So stigmatized can be, in society, but in the workplace, stigmatized is honestly anyone that's not white and male
Yeah.
and heterosexual, because when we look at the top several levels of many companies, most companies that I work with anyway, there's a lack of diversity in those levels. And so anyone that doesn't see themselves reflected in that community, usually it's because maybe, I'm a woman and I'm, it's an all male executive team, or I'm a person of color, but I'm the only one as I move up the ranks. Or I am closeted and I'm LGBT, but I think I'm the only LGBT person, at this level in my company. So often the sensation is that you are the only and lonely, as we call it, and therefore it's maybe not that people don't know you're a woman and don't know you're a person of color. Obviously, we can see that. That's your visible diversity. But covering is downplaying that identity. So it's basically underestimating the level of not wanting to really highlight it, like sanitizing your language every day, so that you can basically get by. You don't want to have difficult conversations. You don't want to highlight it. You kind of minimize the importance of it to your career and to others. And the harmful effect of that, of course, is that it takes so much energy to minimize aspects of your identity, and it means that you're putting energy towards something that's not what you're supposed to be doing, which is coming up with brilliant ideas and succeeding and growing your career. And I call it double working. It's like paying a tax on being different, and we do it to ourselves in order to survive, but it takes a toll, and it also deprives the organization of all of our uniqueness.
And you've had a personal experience with covering in your experience in corporate America, and really inspired your work today. Would you be so kind as to share a little bit about that?
Sure. So I have the journey I've been on personally as someone in this space. I have intersecting aspects of my diversity, and what I've come to understand is some of them carry privilege and some of them don't. So the aspects of me that carry privilege in the business world might be, for example, that I'm another, white. I identify as white, and that's my background. I'm also upper middle class as background, and then I have certain levels of education that enable me to walk into a room and not have to deal with some of the static, perceived or real, that other people do in order to have, frankly, difficult or challenging conversations, which often the conversation about diversity and inclusion is. On the flip side, though, I am a woman and I am an LGBT person. So my gender is obvious. My sexual orientation is not. Mm-hmm. And those are aspects of me where I do assess, so what's happening right now? Am I feeling comfortable in this environment to share all of who I am? Is it important in this situation to come out, for example? So you're always kind of navigating that. And for me, as I've been a business owner over 10 years, I have selectively shared aspects of my story as I've gone, but it hasn't always been assumed by me that I needed to have that conversation every single time in every single meeting. And when you are selling work and when you're dealing with conservative clients, it's very interesting to notice where do you set that bar for yourself in terms of authenticity? I always say, how brave am I feeling today? I will ask myself that, especially if you're walking into rooms where you're not getting a warm and fuzzy vibe around the conversation that you've got to have with folks. Does it help you or does it hinder you to be to weave in aspects of who you are? And you're sort of kind of constantly doing this calculation around like what is the downside potentially, but also what's the upside.
Right.
And I think all of us do this. Whether you're a woman or a person of color or an LGBT person or a person with disability, whether you're a millennial and you're sort of swimming in the waters of a baby boomer leadership team. What is on your mind in terms of, how much is this a tool for me to use right now, and how overt do I want to be about who I am, and what benefit will it have, is something that all of us share. And interestingly, I think the white, straight male executive, of course, is covering as well their political affiliation, their religious beliefs, their socioeconomic background. They're trying to decide as well what they share amongst their peer groups. And I've had really amazing people share in a group of all men these really very vulnerable aspects of who they are, like that they don't have a college degree, but they are an executive. I had this just happened last week, in a room full of 50 executives, including the CEO of the company. And one of the VPs said, I'm going to go out on a limb right now, and I'm going to share something that is true about me that I don't think any of you know. And it was just so moving that he did that. And so that's what I'm talking about, that all of us know something about diversity, and it's very important for leaders of all kinds to talk about these things, because our younger workforce is really hungry to see different and what I might say non-traditional models of leadership.
I'm so honored that you shared that story, Jennifer, and also the story that you mentioned about the client who shared with a room of highly educated people that he or she did not have a college degree. And I share that because vulnerability is such an important quality, I believe, in professionals and certainly for leaders. And when we get to a place where we feel comfortable to be able to go there, it's a very special thing. But as you said, the question is, will it benefit in this scenario? And that's a question every day that we're faced with.
That's so right. And I would just tell all the leaders on the phone, whatever you're leading, or you don't have a team, or you're a solopreneur, I think would be very surprised at who is drawn to you based on you bringing more of your full self to every interaction and what has created you as a leader, and looking at your leadership journey and thinking about not just what's gone well for you, but what has been challenging for you from an identity or diversity perspective, and what have you hidden, and what kind of energy have you put towards hiding that because you think it won't be accepted, and where can you make yourself uncomfortable at least once every day? That's a mantra in all of our circles that you and I share, Caroline. But it's so important for a leader to do that, and I think that comes down to really pushing your own boundaries about what you were taught about what leadership looks like. And I think vulnerability has gone viral as a concept for leaders, because it really, millennial talent especially, they want to see the whole leader. They want to see the whole person. They don't want to see a sanitized or sort of marketed version of you. They want to see, what are you made of? Like, what's important to you? What are you going to go to bat for? How are you going to have the conversation that would resonate with me, as somebody who just joined the organization? And it's interesting, I see a lot of companies kind of straddling this line now with, what do we say about what's going on in society? If there's stuff in the news right now that's impacting communities of employees that we have in the workplace, and things that are happening that are very much weighing on the minds of our, I'll say, diverse talent, and we can define that, whether it's LGBT talent or talent of color, and what are we saying about, as a company, about what's going on, and are we silent on issues that are happening in our political or social arena, where our talent is really looking to us to say something about what our values are as an entity? And I think that's a real cutting edge application of all of this. And There's an incredible video that's out there that's gone viral of the AT&T CEO speaking at a diversity conference with like 2,000 people, employees, and talking about what's going on in society right now and how disturbing it is for him. And it was so honest and it was so brave. And it's really a role model. He is a role model of a white, heterosexual, cisgender male CEO, who's talking about these things that aren't necessarily, you wouldn't think is impacting him because of his sort of community of origin. But as a leader, it impacts him and he knows that it's impacting his workforce. So he's going to talk about it.
And it was so refreshing and I think really inspiring that he went there and was willing to be vulnerable and talk about those very difficult things.
Yes.
So let's talk about diversity in the workplace. Has it improved over the past decade, and how much farther does it have to go? And I ask that because I heard the statistic on Friday of last week. I'm sure you've heard it. It was front page news about how it will take 70 years for women to have pay equity with our male counterparts. And that was very distressing for me.
Yes, me too. And I've been tweeting that like crazy. Yeah, it's really disturbing. The problem is, I think that, we're stuck in this generational bind right now, which is that baby boomer leaders are inhabiting the top parts of many organizations, and because of a lot of things, because of their economic and financial needs, of course, for retirement. We've all gone through a financial crisis not 7 years ago, and it really changed a lot of our personal financial plans, of course. So we're living longer, we're living healthier, we want to stick around longer, right? And that's all of those are wonderful things. But what it is doing is it is blocking, I think, the pipeline upwards in organizations for Generation X to come up into those leadership roles. And as wonderful as baby boomers have been as leaders, and how much wealth they've created and how successful they've been and how in a way really groundbreaking they've been, they have a particular generational lens on what diversity means and doesn't mean that is different from the generations that are coming after them. Just looking at Gen X, which is my generation, I'm 45, we have wrestled with and have sort of come to a new language about when we talk about diversity and inclusion, new expectations of the company that we work for. And then you add millennials behind us, Generation Y. They are like really bold in terms of defining these terms and expecting a company to be very committed to diversity and inclusion from the start. And almost shocked when they come into workplaces to look around them and see, wow, what's wrong with this company that doesn't look like the world that I'm used to and doesn't really talk about these things as a matter of course. So they're coming in, they're seeing these workplaces that are really, really behind. In terms of their understanding of cutting edge application of galvanizing diversity and embedding inclusion in everything that they do, and they're wondering, gee, I don't know if I can stay at a place like this. So
they're holding us accountable, actually. Which is
they
great.
Are. Thank goodness. And they're a giant generation from a numbers perspective. They're much bigger than my generation. So that's a good and bad thing for Gen Xs who are looking at them and saying, hey, please don't take my job.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful because they're bringing these values in and they have the organizational might to push their agenda, whether they're doing that intentionally or not. We as sort of the older generations know we've got to listen to them and we've got to build things around how to attract and retain their worldview, which is going to, I think, create a lot of impetus for change and maybe more than we can do fighting the battle, at the top half of the organization as we are. Maybe that whole generation is just going to come in and they're going to come in and they're going to go out if they don't like what they see. So that's going to be a problem. I think that leads to the slowness that I see in organizations in terms of shifting to move more women and non-traditional talent up the pipeline. I mean, people are still just throwing up their hands and leaving companies. Women are leaving. People of color are leaving. They just can't take it anymore. According to the research I do, sort of anecdotally, and also focus groups, it just becomes so exhausting to push, to be the only in the room, to get passed over because of, unconscious bias, whether that's in the promotion process or the hiring process, and to really feel that people don't understand and respect and value you, it just takes a toll. And I don't blame people for leaving. But the problem is that they leave at the point where they would be getting promoted
Yes.
into senior leadership. Like they are fed up at the point where we can afford to lose them the least. Like that is when you've had somebody in your organization for 10 years, like say you have a woman of color and she's getting promoted, and she's getting more and more exhausted and she is in jeopardy at that critical juncture where she could kind of be very close to the finish line in terms of getting into executive leadership. And she says, I just don't want to do this anymore. And that is the problem. And that's why we're not seeing these numbers change and the pay equity and all of it. It's just all of it adds together. I call it the death by 1,000 cuts. It's a lot of micro inequities that are going on. It's a lot of covering behaviors that we think are expected of us, where we have to modify how we come across and downplay really our full selves. And after a while, it's like, I don't want to put up with this. Why am I doing it? I may as well go and start my own business. I may as well go and look for an employer that values me, where, I can be myself. And that's a loss.
It is a loss. The one happy side of that equation is that quite often those women or whomever that diverse individual is are starting their own business, or they are going to companies where the values do align more. And that's encouraging. And I think it's a great signal to the corporate and even the nonprofit and government sector entities that aren't willing to change and evolve with this time. So we're sending an incredible message. And unfortunately, sometimes that woman is the casualty in that organization, but happily, she's moving the needle on her way out.
Absolutely. That was me. I mean, I left corporate and I sort of never looked back, and I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years. But I do think on the flip side, like you said, there are so many positives to staying in the large corporation or in the company that doesn't get it. If we lose every change agent that could have made a difference to that company, then we're never going to change this equation. And, fact is, not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. I mean,
Agreed.
We need to build organizations where intrapreneurship is something that's valued, that we look at our diverse talent as actually what is going to be the fuel for our growth. And the way we're going to distinguish ourselves in the market and the way we're going to reach diverse markets globally is we look at our talent and we say, this diversity is actually going to unlock our innovation. And we need to value it as such. And there are some companies that do this well. And I think, we've got to stick around long enough that we can be part of building this new reality. And I think that's a very exciting equation for people who are creative, and you just have to be resilient, and you've got to be a warrior and you've got to be really tough, but also it will develop you in ways that, creating change in large companies is an art. It's something that I apply myself to and my team does every single day. How do we shift an organization with 250,000 people globally? Like, what could be more exciting to work on than that?
Well, you are a master change agent, and I'm so grateful for all that you do. Jennifer Brown, your book is extraordinary. Inclusion, diversity, the new workplace, and the will to change. So tell us, how do we buy the book, and how do we follow your great work online?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for that, Caroline. So you can find me a bunch of different places. I'm very active on Twitter at Jennifer Brown. Our website, we have two websites that are linked. We've got jenniferbrownspeaks.com, where you can find the book and find me as a speaker and thought leader and guest. And then we have jenniferbrownconsulting.com, which is a little heavier on the consulting side of the equation. So if you're a change agent in an organization looking for tools and white papers and resources and research, we've got a lot of that good stuff on the consulting website. And our book has been out here, and it's up on Amazon and all the other places you can order online. So please do pick up a copy and consider getting copies for anyone in your organization that is a change agent that's passionate about diversity and inclusion. And know that it will become a desktop resource for you.
I would agree with that. Mine is dog-eared and highlighted and very exciting. So, Jennifer, I wish you continued success, and I'm so grateful for the transformative work that you do. I hope our paths cross again next time in person, and I wish you great success.
Thank you, Caroline, and thanks to everyone for listening today. I appreciate the opportunity.
And I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. Career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. The show is now available on iTunes, YouTube, Podbean, and Stitcher, and I hope you will subscribe so you can get fresh podcasts every week. Leave a comment because I always appreciate hearing from my listeners. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.